Just because you can afford it doesn't mean you should buy it. Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham. For today's installation in our quotes series, we're going to evaluate a quote from Suze Orman when she said, just because you can afford it doesn't mean you should buy it. I agree. End of episode. No, I'm just kidding. But I pick Miss Suze Orman, of course, because of her, in part because of the validity of this statement. First and foremost, at face value, this is a great statement. It makes me think of more than one of the principles from the Becoming Your Own Banker book by R. Nelson Nash, which would then, of course, lead me to the second reason why I would pick a quote from Suze Orman, because if you don't know, she is an opponent of whole life insurance in general, just as a blanket response. She's not a fan. So when it comes to infinite banking, of course, we use properly structured whole life policies with mutual companies that pay dividends. It's the ideal financial asset. I'm aware of more than a dozen reasons why it is so. The ideal asset for privatizing your banking. So many reasons why. But when it comes to this general statement, this general quote of just because you can afford it. Now, I love that first part. Susie's out here doing what she thinks and deems best to encourage folks to be financially fit. Great. To get something, to afford something, whether you're using credit or whether you're using cash. And she's going to be more of a cash is king type, of course. But be that as it may, the sentiment of proactively being financially capable, I love that. It's fantastic. Not always pulling the trigger on buying everything that you want. That side of things, that human problem side, that discipline side, that logical side, I can appreciate that aspect as well. So here's what I'm saying. For those of us that are out here trying to better our financial situation by bettering ourselves, both of those are relevant because tools, processes, principles, precepts, products, lots of things can be used by us. But then, of course, there's still the us part. So here's what I'm saying. Here's an analogy that I would often use is if product were the same, meaning I were in a race car and a professional driver were in a race car and the race cars were the same, who's going to do better? Well, the professional driver, of course. So I think we should always be working on ourselves, improving ourselves. And that would include, say, Parkinson's law, the tendency to spend all that we earn, or the tendency to take all the time that's allotted to us for any given project, even though we don't need that full amount of time. We still tend to spend all of that time. And Susie's saying here, just because you can afford something doesn't mean that you should, okay? Just because I could stretch some project out for a week doesn't mean that I should. If I could knock it out in 2 days, I should do that. So anyway, the driving analogy that I'm thinking of, the professional driver is going to do better than myself, even though we had equal products. Now, are all products created the same? No. No, they are not. Nowadays, for example, I spend a good bit of my time talking with folks about some differences between whole life insurance that's been properly structured for the banking purpose with mutual companies that pay dividends and indexed universal life insurance. Folks are hearing about infinite banking and becoming your own banker, but the product that they're being pointed towards is, and that's if they're even being pointed towards it clearly, is index universal life insurance, which Nash has an actual chapter in his book about why he didn't own universal life insurance and why he didn't write universal life insurance policies. I don't own any universal life policies, any kind of universal life policies, and I wouldn't write them because of all the advantages of the guarantees, number one, in whole life insurance and the absence of risk that is present with index universal life. So again, just trying to point some things out when it does come to products, but of course trying to appreciate Susie for talking about the human aspect of personal finance. I believe even to give some credit to Mr. Dave Ramsey, I believe it's Dave Ramsey that I've heard talked about the importance of recognizing the personal aspect of personal finance. It just makes sense. It's the driver that matters more than the car. You could have a great car, but if you run it into the wall, that's not on the car. That's on you, the driver. So just because you can afford something doesn't mean that you should get it. I wish I could give credit to, now I'm thinking of a saying where I've picked this up, and I like this, and I can appreciate this mentality. And I'm not saying that you should hold yourself to this standard. I don't even necessarily hold myself to this standard, but I appreciate the thinking behind this standard. Somewhere along the lines in business, personal growth, and development, I heard the idea of not buying something until you could afford to buy two of them. That way, if you just ran that worst case scenario that could happen in any given situation in your head, of course, and something happened with the first, you were still in a position to be able to weather that storm, to be able to outright buy a second one again if you needed to and wanted to turn right back around and buy a second one because the first one didn't pan out or whatever. So I hope that you can appreciate what it is that I've carried away from having heard that as well. But credit to Suze Orman for pointing folks to addressing human problems. Nash points to Parkinson's law. Another human problem that he points us towards, though, is the arrival syndrome. Nash actually said that perhaps the arrival syndrome is the most dangerous human problem that we all must confront. And again, if I take the conversation back to whole life insurance and where Dave Ramsey may be or Suze Orman may be or anybody else on the issue of whole life insurance, I'm going to encourage you to investigate it for yourself. Rethink your thinking. You know, it was Will Rogers that said, the problem in America isn't so much what people don't know. It's what they think they know that just ain't so. And when it comes to whole life insurance, I've learned that it's the ideal financial entity to warehouse your capital with. So to learn more about the infinite banking concept, I've got a free introductory presentation on my website, durhamtalents.com. I encourage you to check that out there. And I'd like to encourage you, if you're a longtime listener to our YouTube and our podcast, if you've not yet subscribed, I would love to see you subscribe to our channel. I'm guilty of this myself. I listen to folks that I get a lot of value from, and I'm just so busy in my day that I don't even think of doing that. So I would encourage you to subscribe to our channel. And I look forward to our next conversation. Hope you have a great day. Take care.